Wilson, legendary prog rock artist who has been known to front Porcupine Tree and do his own solo stuff as well. I should probably go back to some of the Porcupine Tree stuff though. It's been a long time. I remember liking it, but I don't know if it's something I particularly am drawn to. His solo work though hasn't really sold me actually, and some of his solo work is really well regarded, and the stuff I've heard personally don't see what's so good about it. But again, I guess maybe I'm just not the perfect match for this genre of music. I think it can be really good obviously, but I'm not exactly talking about prog rock very often on this channel, as you've probably become aware of. But his work has always had something to say, and the lead up to this album was kind of interesting with how he's obviously attempting to make commentary and make an album conceptually about identity and technology, and how the modern world, the modern day links into that, and how one's self can be affected by all of this. An obvious comparison to make after what I've just said there is something like Black Mirror, which has been a pretty influential show, all things considered, considering how deep and bizarre some of the concepts are with that show. But yeah, it seems to have crossed over to a huge audience and has become one of the biggest shows of like the past 5 or 6 years. Personally think some of the concepts that they try out are hit and miss, but I even think an album like this doesn't even attempt to go as far as something like Black Mirror does. There's always such a dystopian, futuristic feel to what Black Mirror tries to do with every episode that they have put out there, whereas Steven Wilson here I don't even think is getting even a smidgen close to what they try and do on that show. And like I say, sometimes Black Mirror misses and falls flat on its face. So with that being said, I'm gonna be honest, this Steven Wilson album is not hitting like that. It ain't working. And even without comparing it to anything else, I just think a lot of its observations are so on the nose, and the idea of this album and everything that he attempts to try and detail on this thing just really falls flat for me. Without looking at the concepts or the lyrical themes on this thing, it doesn't help that musically I don't think it's particularly very good. I don't really think Steven Wilson has a particularly great voice at times. He reaches into this quite annoying screechy falsetto, and it kind of overrides a lot of the track. And then instrumentally, some of these tracks sound pretty standard, not really going in a direction that's particularly very interesting. The track Self, coming after Unself, is lyrically pretty corny, I think, with the references to being self-absorbed, self-obsessed, self-everything you could possibly think of. It's a pretty repetitive lyrical theme and lyrical idea, and it quickly gets pretty stale, I think. Musically, it ends up being more like Muse or Glass Animals. Like, imagine them two coming together, modern Muse collaborating with Glass Animals. Think of like Drones era Muse, and you'd get yourself this kind of like indie contemporary track that really doesn't land too well. The production on this track is just too squeaky clean. I think maybe for a track like this to work, if you're going to go for these kinds of lyrics, you need to have a bit of like a dirtier instrumental, maybe a bit of a kind of like ominous feel to it, because obviously lyrically a lot of these topics are pretty dark and like, oh god, yeah, you just reminded me of how shit things can be. But yet when he's singing with such like a bright tone on these tracks, and the instrumentals are so peppy and chirpy, it just makes everything sound so cheesy. Makes it sound almost too difficult to take seriously. And again, like on tracks like 12 Ghosts, where his voice is just so weak, you can't really get vibing with what he's trying to do. 12 Things I Forgot sounds more like an indie band from the 2000s. There's a specific song, I just can't remember what it was. It was a bit of a hit though. It reminds me of something like that. This is probably the best track actually, because not only lyrically it doesn't go too far off the deep end or anything like that. It kind of stays somewhere in the middle. Musically, it's pretty solid. It's a catchy little pop tune. Vocally, I think he sounds all right here. His boyish charm comes through. He's not going too high or anything like that. I think this is just generally the best track. The bigger issues come in tracks like Eminent Sleaze, where the statement is so in your face There's just no room for any interpretation. The kind of character he's trying to play, some kind of businessman, or even just businesses or corporations in general, just doing everything they can to just sell you a product, everything they can to take them, take your money, away from you. And at the end, he's like, just keep spending, yeah. And in the chorus, which the chorus is written so badly. Like, I get the idea of some kind of sleazy dude just trying to be like, hey, look at my teeth. Hey, look at my sunglasses, and I'm gonna seduce your sister. I'm so charming, look at my suit, yay. Like, I get that, but he just does not sell it here at all. It's just written in such a ish way. Something like this would probably work better if the writing was funnier, like if you got a pretty comedic songwriter, maybe someone like Alex Cameron, someone like that. I think he could sell a track like this. He could play that role in such a hilarious way. But not many artists can really sell the comedy like Alex, or even other ones I could probably think of. So yeah, Stephen here isn't doing it for me. Man of the People just is too bland. It's got this dreamy, soft instrumental. The vocals are a bit more, wavier. It reminds me of something you'd hear on Beck's Morning Phase. But in my opinion, I don't think that's a good album. So anything that would remind me of that wouldn't impress me all that much. It's just too soft and nondescript. And that's the thing with many of these tracks, actually, considering how iconic Steven Wilson has become in the prog rock genre. You would think his voice would have a bit more of a distinctness, but it really doesn't on a lot of these songs. It happens again by the closing track too. Personal Shopper, definitely the worst offender for lyrics though. Well, I feel kind of harsh saying that. I think its idea again is okay. Well, it's one of the better ideas, talking about consumption and how again, businesses will just do everything they can to make you buy things. It's a similar concept to Eminent Sleaze, but it's taken from a different angle. Buy everything, buy even the shit you don't need, buy those box sets even though you probably already had it at home, but you're just going to buy it again. Buy something you've bought a million times before, buy the lies. I get the idea of this. Again, you could probably make something like this work, but there's something about it that feels a bit too lectury, like he's lecturing you. It doesn't really help that it's hard to take the instrumental seriously. It feels like an 80s jam session when it kicks in. The vocals, again, not too great here. And then the interlude, which I believe is Elton John, by the way, who's just kind of listing off everything that you can buy. Anti-aging cream, among many other things. It gets far too Fitter Happier by Radiohead, and I don't like that track. It's so like holier than thou, pretentious gobbledygook that's so like, yeah, I know everything and I know what everyone is trying to do, and you're being sucked in the machine and everyone is controlling you. Again, like something like you'd get from Drones by Muse. You could make these concepts work and make it in a way that isn't like 10 minutes long as well, by the way. And I think, yeah, it's just falling in the wrong hands, because these kinds of lyrics and the way he's writing this track just doesn't particularly work for me. I get it though, I do get it. There's nothing I hate more than adverts and, people trying to ram things down your throat just so you can buy a product. I don't really care for stuff like that. I never really have, actually. Maybe I'm like Steven Wilson and I'm too above it to fall for these lies. And it's certainly worse in America. There's been studies that have shown, like, American adverts are way longer and, are shoved way more in your face on TV, whereas there actually are regulations and rules in the UK about adverts and things that you can and can't show. For example, you can't just advertise like sugary products to children on daytime kids TV. There's lots of rules and stuff like that, so maybe we're heading in the right direction with things like that. And I get it, it is frustrating and people do buy a lot of crap, but I just don't think this song tells you all of that in the best kind of way. I mentioned the final track very briefly, but yeah, this one goes into a much more ambient direction. The vocals are much more restrained and held back. Look, I think with me not liking this album up until this point, I'm not going to like the closing track. It's not going to be something that completely makes me go, oh, actually, I'm sold on this now. So I think if you were liking the album, you're going to like this track because you like his voice or whatever, but I just don't. I guess Follower is pretty catchy, not one of the worst tracks here. I don't think this album's absolutely awful or anything like that. And there are some okay moments, but yeah, generally I just think the overarching theme and concept just doesn't land. I've got to go 4 out of 10. I do want to see what people think though. I've seen mixed responses to this. Definitely think people could absolutely hate it, and people could probably think it has something to say, which is fair enough. But I've got to admit, for as many issues as we have in the modern day, the modern era with technology and, self-identity, and how, consumerism could be causing us all to be, I don't even know, I'm not the person to talk about this, but anyway, all of the things you could point to in the modern day, there really aren't many good albums that tackle these issues. Like, I have got to be honest, I don't know if there's ever going to be an album that tries this and makes it work. The DJ Shadow album, if you guys remember, wasn't too good. And again, even some films that try doing this, even some TV shows that try doing this, often kind of fall flat. I've just kind of got to wonder, is there a way to make this work? And if there is, tell me and point me to these pieces of art and media in the comments, because I've got to find them. Thank you for watching though. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Do have a good day. Subscribe if you haven't already. That would be great. And goodbye.